everyone.
Hi guys.
We're Anna and Julia, co-founders of Brave Brushes Studio, a community for artists and urban sketchers. Our community, our blog, and our YouTube channel, thanks for watching by the way, all aim to achieve one thing, to help you become a better sketcher. And today we're doing that by addressing a common mistake that we see in a lot of sketches. Too many sketches, to be honest.
Yes,
Uh,
especially by beginning artists.
and this mistake is, Julia, what are we talking about today?
Drawing trees and in a wrong way.
Okay,
Oh, maybe it's not wrong. People just don't know how to draw them more subtle, more interesting. So we can show it today, and yeah. So their trees will look much more beautiful, much more interesting.
okay, let's get started. Are we going to start with the wrong way or the right way?
What do you think? Let me
Well, I
think first.
definitely, Julia, I know how I would draw a tree, and you don't want to see that.
Maybe I do. I think showing how the wrong way look like is the best idea to start with, because then don't do this.
All right, and then we'll tell you what to do instead, how
Yes.
to improve your trees. And again, this does not, as I understand this from what Julia told me before we started recording, this does not require much skill. It's mostly just being aware of what to do and what not to do when you draw or paint a tree.
Yes, but the more you practice, as I say always, the more you practice, the more beautiful, the easier it becomes.
Okay.
So practice always makes better. Um, the wrong way of drawing trees starts with the wrong brush, and there is nothing wrong with any brush. I believe that you can use any brush, even the worst brush you can find. You can use it for drawing textures, for example. But not all brushes are suitable for all types of sketching or painting. So I usually see people use a brush, a medium-sized brush, for painting pretty much everything. And for example, when they um, paint a tree, and I'm going to do it today with one color. So start practicing with one color, because it will make your practicing much easier. You will see it much better. And if you can um, paint with one color, you can probably paint with more colors. Okay, so the color I'm going to use today is a Berlin violet. If you don't have a color like this, just use a blue color or a color like, I don't know, dark brown, for example.
Just don't make it green, right? Because this video
Exactly.
is not about mixing greens and painting, well, greenery.
Exactly. So the wrong way of painting trees is something like this. I don't know. It's when you know how to paint them, it's easy to do it wrong. And so I think the biggest mistake is the tree trunk, actually, because I see it very often that they look like this, too thick, too like not absolutely not interesting to see. I don't know. They don't exist, actually. I've never seen a tree trunk like this.
Okay, well, I'm not
They're
sure
more
if this
elegant.
is true, Julia, but okay.
They are much more elegant in
All right.
reality.
So this is more like a tree-shaped symbol than a drawing or a painting of a tree. right? So trunk and the crown,
Yes.
very simple.
Yes.
So that's not how you draw or how you paint trees.
No, no. For a beautiful tree, you actually need a thicker brush with a thinner
Tip.
tip. Yes. And
So, and the other one, the one that you said was wrong, what was wrong? Can you show them together?
it's a little bit too small actually. The tip is by the way thin, but the brush itself is too the size of the brush is too small, I think, for painting a good tree. And I think this brush is also quite stiff, so it's very difficult to paint a beautiful tree trunk with it. So I will show you that this is pretty much the same brush, but but it's thinner by the way. But I'm going to show you how to use it for painting beautiful branches. So a thicker brush with a thin tip. And a very important thing is that we use the watercolor. We put it on the palette first. Make it thinner. And then we start to apply it to our paper. And we do it in a very important thing, by the way. The wrist should be relaxed so that you can create this better shape of the tree. And let me paint it a little bit bigger. So the edges of the tree are much more interesting, much more natural, I think. And you can paint this whole thing equally, so the same color. Don't skip the white parts, but you can also leave them like this, and this will make your painting even more interesting. Then I take even more color, darker color, and put it on one side of the tree. So to make the shadow dark on one side, and you can see that this way I create the volume in my tree. And then this is why we need it to be flexible. I start to paint the branches, because it's not like this. Every tree has branches and we usually see them, and sometimes we don't, but even when we don't see them, we can paint them just to make our tree look more interesting. For example, something like this. We can use a smaller brush to add some very thin branches, like this, to create even more interest in the sketch. And a very important thing that pretty much every beginner forget is the shadow on the ground, the drop shadow. And there are different ways to paint it, and I do it like this. I start with making the paper wet, like this, and then I make my brush try, take some color, and paint the shadow. And it's not the exact shadow of this tree, it's just a suggestion of it, but you can see that it looks so much more interesting, right? I hope it looks better than this tree.
Well, it certainly does. So let me, Julia, how about you paint another tree and can you paint and listen at the same time? I'm going to try and summarize what you have done.
Okay.
So basically, you create a more irregular shape, right? So it's not a circle of a tree, it's not a
No.
rounded canopy, it's a more irregular shape.
Yes.
And so some parts of it go inside, some parts of it go outside. So that's one thing.
Yes.
Then, of course, using shadows, there's a lighter part and a darker
Yes.
part.
Yes.
And you should be very clear where your light source is.
Yes.
Then, painting a trunk, well, the trunk will have a few big branches where
Yes.
it connects to the crown of the tree.
Yeah.
And maybe even painting a double trunk would be a beautiful solution.
Yes. Yes. Absolutely. Yes.
And of course, no tree is complete without a shadow.
A shadow. The drop shadow.
Yeah, does
So
this
there should
pretty
be a
much
shadow.
cover it?
I'm sorry?
Does this pretty much cover it?
Yes. Absolutely. Yes.
All right. So it turns out, Julia, you cannot paint and listen at the same time, which I asked you to do. So how about you paint another tree? And
Yeah.
here's a little challenge for you. No, leave that brush alone. There's a challenge for you. Pick up the wrong brush and try to paint a beautiful tree.
Okay. Okay. Maybe it will be.
Well,
Uh,
Julia, it's a challenge. Come on.
okay. 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 So again, I start with yeah. You can see that when I paint with the with this brush, the strokes are a little bit thicker at the end. I don't know. It's less flexible, and this is the reason. On one way, it's the smallest parts are thicker than I would prefer, and the thicker part are actually a little bit too small.
All right. Yeah, I see what you mean. Yes. Okay, but still, can you pull it off? Create a beautiful tree, right? A true artist works with the tools they've got,
Yeah.
or not.
Yeah, and maybe yeah, for this part, let me try. Maybe if you it looks actually not that bad. Okay, the brush is not very wrong, but I'm pretty much sure that it would be much more difficult for a beginner to paint like this. Maybe this should be the conclusion. This brush is more difficult for a beginner to paint a tree. So try to use a brush with a with a thicker belly and a very nice fine tip.
And longer
Yeah.
bristles too, right?
And longer bristles, yes, yes. They are a little bit less easy to control. Uh, but on the other hand, if you practice with trees, that means that you can paint more complicated objects easier.
All right. Well, thank you, Julia, for this
Thank you.
quick tutorial. And now, compared to the two trees that you've painted, the one in the top left corner does not look like a tree at all.
No, it's like a lolly, I think.
All right. Well, Julia has got lots to teach you guys uh, already in the form of recorded courses, videos, workshops, and also her head is filled with lots of other ideas. We'll be back next week with a new video. In the meantime, remember that the best way to learn from Julia is in Brave Brushes Studio. It's bravebrushes.com. It's got all the information you need to know, and we hope to see you there very soon. Bye
Yes.
bye.
Bye bye.